The envelope was ivory, thick as a lie, sealed with a wax stamp that looked like something out of a period drama. I stared at it for a long time before opening it, half of me curious, the other half already bracing for whatever fresh insult they had conjured this time. Inside, a formal wedding invitation. Chloe Marie Temple and Liam Andrew Carter cordially invite you to witness their union. I stopped reading. Liam. My Liam. Or rather, who used to be mine, before he started showing up late, turning cold, forgetting things we used to do together, and ultimately leaving me with the kind of silence that can only mean someone else had started whispering in his ear. I just never imagined that whisper would come from my own sister. And now they were getting married. But that wasn't the worst part. No. The worst part was the dress. Because when I finally went to my mother, hands trembling, voice shaking, asking her if this was some kind of mistake, if Chloe was really going to marry my ex-fiancé, she didn't even look up from folding laundry. She's your sister, Grace. Don't be dramatic. I was supposed to marry him. Well, she said, smoothing out a blouse. She just fits into your life better than you ever did. I thought that would be the end of it. That there was no room left for more cruelty. Until I saw the photo on Chloe's Instagram story 2 days later. A bridal fitting. Lace, sleeves, hand-sewn pearls. My mother's handwriting in the caption. My girls both looked beautiful in this dress when we picked it out for Grace, but it really belongs to Chloe. They were using my wedding dress, the one I'd spent a year designing, the one I'd cried into the day after Liam left me, the one I had stored in the garment bag in the guest room closet, until Chloe conveniently found it and decided it was hers. I didn't comment. I didn't text. I didn't call. I just stared at the post and let the silence stretch, letting their betrayal cement itself in my bones like winter frost. I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to beg. That's what they expected. They wanted me to break. But I wasn't going to break. I was going to remember. And when the time was right, I would make them remember too. The first time I saw Liam again, he didn't look like the man I had loved for 5 years. He looked like someone who had been rewritten, rebranded for a new audience. His hair was styled more conservatively, his laugh shorter and less authentic, his hand resting too carefully on the small of Chloe's back like he was still learning. The choreography of his own life. They invited me to the rehearsal dinner. Chloe called it an olive branch. I want us to be close again, Grace. I know it's been messy, but I didn't plan for any of this to happen. She sounded rehearsed, like she was reading lines someone else wrote. I almost said no. I almost blocked her number right then. But I didn't. I went. I showed up wearing the burgundy silk dress I'd saved for a different occasion. The one Liam once said made me look unreachable, like someone out of a novel. I walked in late, on purpose, and the second I entered the room, the air shifted. Forks paused. Conversations hiccuped. Even the pianist seemed to hit a wrong note. My mother stood and forced a smile. Grace, you made it. Good. Chloe came, up and hugged me like we hadn't gone a full year without speaking. Like she hadn't stolen the man I was supposed to marry and the dress I dreamed about since I was 17. You look beautiful, she whispered against my cheek, lips curved into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. But I wouldn't wear that color to the wedding. You might upstage me. I pulled away slowly. Don't worry, I don't plan on being in any of the photos. A couple of people chuckled from nearby tables, but Chloe's face stiffened. She was always good at hiding nerves, but I saw the flicker, the flash of uncertainty. That was enough. For now. I took my seat across from Aunt June, the only relative, who still treated me like I hadn't done something wrong by simply existing. "You've lost weight," she whispered with concern. I nodded. "Stress diet." She leaned in closer. "If it's worth anything, you were always too good for him." That small sentence made something stir inside me, something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Validation. As the night dragged, and I sat through a slideshow of Liam and Chloe's love story, or the sanitized version of it. The photos started around the time Liam and I were still together. I recognized one image, in fact. He was wearing the same shirt from a weekend trip we had taken to Lake Placid. They'd just cropped me out. Chloe was glowing. Liam looked duller somehow, like a painting left too long in the sun. And then came the final image on the screen. Chloe at her dress fitting, in my dress. They didn't even bother changing it. The neckline, the buttons, the sleeve detail I had cried over for months trying to perfect. She looked radiant in it, and I hated that I noticed. Someone behind me said, "That dress was made for her." I smiled tightly. Actually, it was made for me. The woman blinked, caught off guard. I turned back toward the stage as the clapping started. Chloe and Liam stood there beaming, soaking in their curated applause. I clapped too, but not for them. I clapped for the lie, because I was going to let them live inside it for just a little while longer. And then I was going to tear it down, piece by piece. The morning after the rehearsal dinner, I woke to a silence so thick it felt deliberate. No calls, no texts, not even from my mother. Especially not from my mother. I lay in bed for an hour, watching the ceiling fan spin, thinking about the way Chloe had smirked when the final photo of her in my dress lit up the screen, the way Liam barely made eye contact with me the whole night, the way Mom praised the cake tasting like it was a sacred ritual, ignoring how I flinched every time the word bride left her mouth. They were all rewriting history and erasing me from the margins. I needed air, so I walked. The neighborhood hadn't changed. Same brick-lined sidewalks, same hedges cut like conformity, same porch where Chloe and I used to sit with popsicles dripping down our wrists, back when she still called me Gracie and asked to wear my glitter nail polish. Now she wore my life. As I turned the corner past the church, I passed the old house, our grandparents' place. It had been empty since Nana died 2 years ago, still under probate, collecting dust and ivy like forgotten things do. And then I remembered something. The mailbox. Nana's mailbox had always been locked with a tiny brass key that she wore around her neck. When she passed, I'd been the one to help clean out her belongings, to box up her scarves and lavender sachets, her recipe books and rosaries. I remembered slipping the brass key into my pocket and thinking, I'll hold on to it, just in case. I dug through my drawer the moment I got home, and there it was, taped inside the back of an old journal. I drove back to the house. The mailbox was rusted shut, vines creeping up the sides like nature was trying to reclaim it. I jiggled the key until it gave way with a creak. Inside was dust, a few leaves, and 2 unopened envelopes. One was an old utilities bill. The other was thicker. I pulled it out and saw my name on the front. Grace Eleanor Temple. The handwriting was unmistakable. Nana's. The seal was brittle with age. I opened it carefully, heart hammering in my chest. Inside was a letter. My dearest Grace, if you're reading this, then something tells me you've been left out again. You always had the kindest heart. Too kind sometimes. That's why I wanted to make sure you'd find this eventually. There are some things I couldn't say out loud with your mother around. She's always had a way of making other people's needs feel like a burden. But you always made space for mine. I left something for you. Something they'll never expect. It's in the blue box behind the pantry wall. The one you and Chloe used to hide in during hide and seek. I hope it brings you peace, or power, or maybe both. You were never meant to play second to anyone, Grace. With all my love. Nana, I stared at the letter, my hands trembling. The pantry wall. I remembered that wall. The way the panels shifted if you pressed on the knot in the wood. I was in my car again before I even knew what I was doing. When I got to the house, I slipped through the back gate, the spare key still hidden under the fake rock by the hydrangeas. The inside smelled of old wood and mothballs. My footsteps echoed through the kitchen as I approached the pantry. I pressed on the knot. A panel slid open with a pop, and there it was, a faded blue box tied with twine. I untied it. Inside, a worn leather folder, a small velvet pouch, a flash drive, and a notarized document. The folder contained the real will. I read every word twice. My heart beat so hard I thought it might bruise from the inside. The house wasn't Chloe's. It wasn't Mom's. It wasn't even under joint family ownership anymore. Nana had left it, and the attached inheritance, to me, exclusively, with a clause that no one had told me about. A clause that voided every claim Chloe and my mother had made to anything Nana owned, if they acted in a way that undermined my rights. A clause they'd violated the moment they touched anything in that house. I sat down on the pantry floor, the letter still in my lap, the box open beside me. They had taken everything they thought they could get away with, but Nana had given me a key. Not just to the mailbox. To everything. The velvet pouch was small. Faded navy, tied with a fraying gold string. I held it in my palm for a long time before opening it, afraid of what it might contain, or what it might confirm. Inside was a delicate gold chain with a teardrop-shaped sapphire pendant, unmistakably antique, and a folded piece of notebook paper that smelled faintly of lavender. I unfolded it carefully. Grace, this necklace belonged to your great-grandmother Eleanor. It has always gone to the woman in the family with the clearest heart. Not the loudest, not the prettiest, not the most adored. The one who endures, who sees, who remembers. I saved it for you. Your mother wanted it for herself. Chloe will say it's hers by right, but blood and legacy are not the same. Wear it when you need to remember who you are. Nana, I closed my fist around it. That necklace was never about jewelry. It was about proof. Symbolic proof that Nana saw what they tried to erase. I placed the pendant gently back into the pouch, then turned my attention to the flash drive. Back home, I plugged it into my laptop. Folders, dozens of them, labeled with names, dates, scanned, documents, emails, financial transfers, and one folder simply labeled, "Do not trust her." I clicked. Photos loaded, screenshots of text messages between Chloe and my mother. Voicemails. One in particular stopped me cold. Nana's voice, shaky but clear, recorded on what looked like a phone call. She said grace is just filler. That she was only ever supposed to be temporary until Chloe found someone better. My heart broke. That's not how daughters treat sisters. That's not how love works. And if something happens to me before I can fix this, I pray Grace finds this. I pray she sees them clearly. My vision blurred with tears. It wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated cruelty. They hadn't stumbled into Liam. They had planned it. And then I remembered something else. The date on that voicemail, 2 days before Nana's fall. The one they called an accident. The story was that she tripped outside. But the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Nana wasn't frail. Not mentally. Not physically. She had a cane, yes. But she never needed help going down the steps. I knew that porch. The railing was secure. She always double-knotted her slippers. Why hadn't I asked more questions? Why had I let grief fog my judgment? Why had I let them control the narrative? The phone calls, the voicemail, the will, the claws, the necklace, all of it pointed in the same direction. They weren't just cruel, they were dangerous, and I had let them smile in my face for years. But no more. I emailed copies of the will and the files to a law office I found in Nana's address book, her estate attorney. I requested a meeting. In person, I also printed several key files from the flash drive and made duplicate USB copies. Then I sat in my bedroom with the necklace around my neck and stared into the mirror. This time, when I saw my reflection, I didn't see the girl they left behind. I saw the woman who was about to walk into that wedding with more power than any of them knew existed. The morning of the wedding was overcast, the kind of gray that feels like a held breath. I stood in front of my closet, holding the garment bag that held my old bridesmaid dress, the one Chloe had picked out back when I was supposed to be the bride. Dust clung to the hem. It still smelled like rose water and betrayal. I didn't wear it. Instead, I put on a sleek black dress, simple, tailored, floor length. It wasn't flashy. It was quiet power. Paired with Nana's sapphire around my neck, I looked like something they wouldn't see coming. The venue was exactly the kind of place Chloe would choose. All white stone, glass chandeliers, and a fountain out front that probably cost more than my car. Guests buzzed like bees, sipping champagne under awnings, flipping through wedding programs with her face smiling up from the front. I walked in alone, and heads turned. People I hadn't seen in years did double takes. Some smiled with half guilt, half recognition. Others simply looked away, as if shame had a scent and I was carrying it on my shoulders. I didn't mind. Let them look, let them wonder. Grace? It was Aunt June. She looked me up and down like she was reassessing everything she'd ever been told. You look... Her voice dropped to a whisper. You look ready. I smiled. I am. The ceremony hadn't started yet. I found my place. In the third row. Not family, not stranger. Purgatory. But I chose that seat on purpose. Direct line of sight to the altar. Direct line of sight to Chloe. The music began. Everyone stood, and then she walked in. Chloe, wearing my dress. Even with the veil. It was unmistakable. The lace trim I'd argued for. The satin underskirt. The exact way it hugged the waist. The pattern in the back buttons I'd sketched in the margins of my college notebooks. It should have broken me. It didn't. I studied her face, and for the first time, I saw something new. Desperation. She looked at Liam like he was a life raft. She clung to his arm like a claim. But his eyes weren't on her. Not fully. And then he saw me. For the first time since the rehearsal dinner, Liam's gaze locked on mine, and something flickered. Recognition. Regret. Maybe even something close to guilt. Good. Let him feel it. The officiant began. Chloe and Liam turned to face each other, exchanging lines from a script that wasn't meant for them. Do you, Chloe, take this man? I reached into my clutch, slid out the flash drive. It wasn't just symbolic anymore. It was active. Earlier that morning, I'd mailed packages, one to Liam's office marked confidential, one to the estate attorney with the real will, one to the church where Nana volunteered for 30 years, and one to the wedding venue manager, who happened to have a strict anti-fraud policy regarding events held on disputed property. Because, see, the venue Chloe had chosen, it had been booked in Nana's name, and the land it sat on, technically tied up in my inheritance, through a trust no one bothered to read. The ceremony continued, but the storm was already building. Not outside. Inside. Could feel it. In the shifting glances, in the subtle tension in Chloe's shoulders, in the way my mother kept glancing at her phone, because it had started. Emails were being received. Voicemails were being listened to. Files were being opened. And for the first time in years, they were the ones bracing for impact. I leaned back, crossing my legs, Nana's sapphire cool against my collarbone. Let the show begin. The vows were halfway finished when the first ripple hit. It started with a man in a dark suit stepping through the side aisle. The venue manager, clipboard in hand, jaw tight, eyes scanning the crowd like he wasn't looking for beauty. He was looking for fraud. He whispered something to one of the ushers, who stiffened, then nodded and disappeared down the hall. Liam's voice wavered slightly as he repeated his lines. I promise to love you, protect you, and honor you. His words stumbled as his gaze drifted toward the commotion behind the last row of chairs. A staff member, now visibly speaking to Chloe's wedding planner, who had turned pale. I kept my eyes forward, expression serene. Across the aisle, my mother noticed, finally. Her phone lit up in her lap. She glanced down, blinked, frowned. Another ping. She began scrolling, and her mouth dropped open. 1 minute later, she stood up and stepped out of the row. Quietly, unsteadily. Chloe noticed. Her veil fluttered slightly as she turned her head to follow Mom's retreating figure. Liam cleared his throat. Is everything okay? He asked, his voice low. Chloe didn't answer. Her lips were tight. Another staff member approached the front and whispered something to the officiant. The entire ceremony paused. I apologize, the officiant said. There appears to be a minor issue we need to address before we proceed. A hush fell over the room. A few people glanced around, confused. Others leaned in for gossip. But I knew what was happening. The truth was bleeding through the glass. From my seat, I could see Liam's best man pull him aside. Whispers. A phone shoved into his hands. More scrolling. More stillness. I didn't move. I didn't gloat. I sat there, black dress, sapphire pendant, calm as a storm's eye, and watched the carefully constructed illusion unravel. Chloe's voice finally broke the silence. What is this? she hissed to the wedding planner, who was now white-knuckling. "A folder of printed documents. I need to speak with you." "Privately," the planner murmured, pulling her by the elbow. Chloe resisted. "I'm not leaving the altar." But the planner leaned in and whispered something, and Chloe's face drained of all color. She turned slowly toward the audience, toward me, and for a fraction of a second, our eyes locked. She knew. Not everything. Not yet. But she knew I had done something. She could see it in the way I didn't flinch, in the way I sat perfectly still while her entire fantasy teetered. Liam stepped down from the altar, phone still in hand, walking toward the side doors. He didn't wait for her. Gasps floated through the crowd. Someone stood to leave. The officiant closed his book, and in the middle of it all, Chloe stood frozen, her hands clenched into fists. In my dress, on my day, on my stolen altar. And, for the first time since this all began, she looked small, powerless, because none of it was hers. Not the dress, not the venue, not the fiancé anymore. I waited 5 more minutes, let the whispers rise like smoke, then stood quietly and walked out, the back, unnoticed, unbothered, untouchable. My phone buzzed once as I reached the car, from Aunt June. "It's happening. I'm proud of you. Call me when you're ready." I turned the key in the ignition, Nana's necklace catching the light in the rearview mirror. The wedding wasn't just falling apart. It was collapsing under the weight of truth, and I was just getting started. It only took 48 hours for the calls to start. I ignored the first 10. By call 12, Chloe left a voicemail. Her voice was ragged, brittle. Gone was the Instagram bride with her curated glow and poised fake laughter. "Grace, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you've made a mess of everything. You've ruined the most important day of my life, and I hope you're proud of yourself." Click, I was. Very. By day 3, I had a sit-down meeting with Nana's estate attorney, Mr. Donnelly, a silver-haired man with eyes like ice chips and a memory sharp enough to recall the exact language of a will signed 5 years prior. He poured me tea like I was royalty. "You were smart to come directly to me," he said, flipping through the folder I'd brought. "This version of the will overrides all prior drafts, dated, notarized, and legally binding. And the clause you highlighted, yes, it's enforceable." "So the house," I asked quietly, "is yours," he confirmed, legally and without contest, especially now that the others acted in bad faith. He showed me paperwork ready, for filing. Deed transfers, cease and desist notices. I signed them all with steady hands. By day 5, the wedding was a punchline in whispers across town. A canceled ceremony, a venue dispute, a groom who walked out mid-vow. Aunt June told me people were asking questions. That same day, the venue's legal team called my mother. She'd signed a contract under false ownership claims. They were threatening litigation. And Chloe? She was trying to save face on social media, spinning the disaster into a spiritual pivot. "Sometimes the universe has a different plan," she posted. "Thank you to everyone who supported us through this pause in our celebration of love." No mention of the fraud, no mention of me. But she knew. Everyone knew. That night, I walked through Nana's house again, my house now, barefoot on the old wood floors, moonlight sliding across picture frames. Everything felt different. Not because anything had changed, but because I owned it now, literally, emotionally, and not just the house. The story. My story. In the living room, I sat on Nana's old velvet couch with a box of her keepsakes on my lap. Inside was a black and white photo of her as a young woman, standing on the porch in a dress that looked like defiance. I traced the edges of the frame and whispered, "Thank you." Because Nana hadn't just left me property. She'd left me proof, and power, and the chance to finally rewrite the version of me that Chloe and Mom had spent years trying to erase. The next day, a letter arrived. Handwritten, no return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Mom. Grace, you've embarrassed this family. You've humiliated your sister. I don't know what lies Nana fed you before she passed, but we always did what we thought was best for you. It's not too late to make this right. Give Chloe the house. Give her the life she was meant to have. She's fragile right now. Be the bigger person. I raised you to be generous, even when it hurts. Mom, I read it twice. Then I tossed it into the fireplace and watched the flames erase. It word by word. She wanted generosity. She should have taught that to Chloe. She should have practiced it herself. Instead, they'd taught me silence. And now they were learning what happens when silence ends. They came for me with polished smiles and rehearsed lies. Chloe filed a formal motion disputing the will, claiming undue influence. She said Nana had been confused in her final months, that I had manipulated her for the house, the inheritance, the legacy. My mother backed her up. Of course she did. Their lawyer submitted photos of Nana's pill bottles and claimed mental decline, but they didn't expect the video. The flash drive Nana left me wasn't just full of emails and voicemails. There was also a single, time-stamped video file, Nana, sitting in her armchair, clear-eyed, hands folded in her lap. "If anyone challenges this will," she said into the camera, "you show them this. I am of sound mind. I'm not confused. I know exactly what I'm doing. Grace is the only person in this family who has never taken from me. She's the only one who shows up without asking for something. She's the only one who listens. Everything I leave to her, I leave with love, not guilt, not regret. If my daughter or granddaughter tries to say otherwise, remember, I raised one of them. I tolerated the other, and neither deserves the house I built." My lawyer submitted the footage during the court hearing. The judge didn't even blink. Dismissed Chloe's motion on the spot, called their claims meritless and manipulative. I didn't turn to look at them as I left the courtroom. They had wanted the house. They had wanted Liam. They had wanted my silence. Now all they had were whispers and reputations unraveling like cheap thread. 2 months later, a moving van pulled away from the curb outside my new home, my real home. I had repainted the walls, replaced the curtains, restored the garden to the way Nana kept it, filled with lavender and sunflowers. I found the old swing Chloe and I used to play on as kids and had it fixed, not for nostalgia, for closure. I got a text from Liam exactly 82 days after the wedding. I didn't know everything. I'm sorry. I miss who we used to be. I blocked the number. Some ghosts don't deserve resurrection. I framed Nana's last letter, hung it by the front door, not as a reminder of betrayal, but as proof that someone once saw me completely and believed I deserved more. On the day of what would have been Chloe's rescheduled wedding, I went to the beach. I wore the sapphire necklace and nothing else fancy. I walked barefoot through the tide and let the cold water remind me I was alive, alone, and absolutely whole. No dresses stolen. No name erased. No legacy rewritten. Just me. Grace Eleanor Temple. Sahpar. Daughter who was never meant to win. And the woman who did.